The stars looked different from this observation deck. Ju-Ray pressed her hand against the clear barrier as Earth rotated slowly beneath the station. Her pale blue skin reflected in the glass, four-fingered hands splayed wide. "First time seeing a Class M planet?" asked a voice behind her. Ju-Ray turned, her large eyes blinking twice in the vertical motion typical of her species. A human male stood there, shorter than an aetheri, but sturdy-looking, with dark hair and what humans called a smile. Ju-Ray had studied this expression extensively before her assignment. "I am xenobiologist Ju-Ray," she said, her translator converting her high-pitched tones into human English. "This is my first Earth assignment." "Tahoe," the human replied with a small bow that surprised her. "Physicist. I'll be working with your team on a consciousness mapping project." Ju-Ray's secondary eyelids flickered with interest. "You are the quantum consciousness specialist." "Guilty as charged," Tahoe said, then seeing her confusion, added, "That means yes." This was why Ju-Ray had requested this assignment. Humans used expressions that made no logical sense. They communicated with body language and tone as much as with words. They were inefficient, emotional, and utterly fascinating. The diplomatic exchange station had been built 5 years ago, after humans achieved faster-than-light travel and promptly crashed into an aetheri science vessel. Rather than the disaster it could have been, the accident became the first contact between two very different intelligent species. Humans were chaotic, emotional, and driven by forces the logical aetheri couldn't fully understand. The aetheri were methodical, practical, and had evolved without the capacity for strong emotions or intuitive leaps. What they lacked in creativity, they made up for with technological precision. The station served as neutral ground, a place where both species could study each other safely. 3 days later, Ju-Ray observed as Tahoe prepared for his brain scan. The human lab technicians attached sensors to his head, while Ju-Ray calibrated the aetheri consciousness mapping device. "This won't hurt," she assured him, reciting the words she had been taught to say to human research subjects. "It merely records the quantum state of your neural processes." Tahoe smiled again. Ju-Ray had noticed he did this frequently. "I'm not worried," he said. "I've been scanned by our own equipment plenty of times." "Your equipment is primitive," Ju-Ray stated, not understanding how this could be taken as rude until she saw Tahoe's smile fade slightly. "I mean, your technology is different," she corrected. "Different is good," Tahoe said, his smile returning. "That's why we're here, right? To learn from our differences." Ju-Ray activated the scanner, and holographic displays lit up around them. The aetheri device mapped not just brain activity, but the quantum states that underpinned consciousness itself. It was technology the aetheri had perfected centuries ago when studying their own minds. What appeared on the screen made Ju-Ray step back. "Is something wrong?" Tahoe asked, unable to move his head with the sensors attached. "This cannot be correct," Ju-Ray said, recalibrating the device and running the scan again. The same patterns appeared. "Your consciousness pattern, it doesn't match our models." After the scan was complete, Ju-Ray showed Tahoe the results. 2 brain patterns floated in the holographic display, 1 blue, aetheri, and 1 red, human. "This is a typical aetheri consciousness pattern," she explained, pointing to the blue image. "Notice how the quantum states are ordered, logical, following clear cause and effect patterns." Tahoe nodded, studying both images carefully. "And this," she continued, indicating the red pattern, "is yours. The quantum states, they're not bound by normal causality. There are connections that shouldn't be possible according to our models." "What does that mean?" Tahoe asked. Ju-Ray's fingers moved rapidly over the controls, running more analyses. "I'm not certain, but there's something here. A pattern that extends beyond the physical neurons, like an energy signature that exists independently of the brain tissue itself." Tahoe looked thoughtful. "You know, this might relate to my research. I've been studying quantum consciousness theory. The idea that human consciousness operates on quantum principles that can't be explained by classical physics alone. We should run more tests, Juri said, her scientific curiosity fully engaged, with more human subjects. Over the next several weeks, Juri and Taiho scanned dozens of human volunteers. Each scan showed the same puzzling pattern, quantum signatures that seemed to extend beyond physical brain function in ways the Aetheri had never observed in any species, including themselves. One evening, as they reviewed the latest data, Taiho said something that changed everything. "You know what this reminds me of? Old human theories about the soul." Juri's translator hesitated on the last word. "Soul. I am not familiar with this term." Taiho leaned back in his chair, thinking about how to explain. Many human cultures believe that we have something beyond our physical bodies, a non-physical essence that contains our true consciousness. Some call it a soul, others a spirit. It's supposed to be what makes us uniquely ourselves, beyond our physical brain. Juri's eyes widened. "You believe your consciousness exists separately from your physical form." "Many humans do," Taiho explained. "Almost every human culture develops some concept of it independently. Some believe it continues after physical death. This concept was completely alien to the Aetheri, who had evolved without any spiritual traditions. They had always understood consciousness as purely physical, a product of brain function and nothing more." "And you?" Juri asked. "Do you believe in this soul?" Taiho smiled. "I'm a scientist. I believe in evidence, but I've always thought there must be something to the idea if so many different human cultures came to similar conclusions. Maybe what we're seeing in these scans is the physical evidence of something humans have sensed intuitively for thousands of years." The next day, Juri requested permission to conduct a new type of experiment. She wanted to measure the consciousness patterns of humans during various activities: problem solving, creating art, meditation, and emotional responses. During one test, Taiho was asked to solve a complex physics problem while being scanned. Juri watched in amazement as his consciousness pattern shifted and connected in ways that defied Aetheri understanding of how problems should be solved. "How did you reach that conclusion?" she asked when he found an elegant solution to a problem that would have taken an Aetheri much longer to solve through methodical steps. Taiho shrugged. "I just had a feeling about which approach would work. Intuition, I guess." "Intuition," Juri repeated, the word strange on her tongue. The Aetheri had no word for this concept. Later, they scanned a human artist as she painted. The consciousness pattern glowed and pulsed in ways that looked almost like joy. "Emotions," Taiho explained. "They drive much of what we do." Juri found herself spending more time with Taiho outside of their research. He taught her about human concepts she had never encountered: art, music, humor, faith. She attempted to explain Aetheri philosophy and social structure, but found humans already understood logic and order. It was the Aetheri who were missing something. 1 month into their research, Juri made her report to the Aetheri Science Council via holographic transmission. "The humans possess a quantum consciousness pattern unlike anything we have encountered," she explained, showing the comparative scans. "Their consciousness seems capable of operations that defy our understanding of physics. They solve problems through intuition, create without logical purpose, and experience emotions that drive actions we would consider irrational." The council members looked concerned. "Is this a threat?" one asked. "No," Juri replied firmly. "It is an opportunity. There is evidence that what humans call their soul may be a real quantum phenomenon, one that our species does not possess in the same way. Understanding this could revolutionize our comprehension of consciousness itself." After the transmission ended, Juri found Taiho waiting outside the communication room. "How did it go?" he asked. "They are skeptical," she admitted. "The Aetheri do not easily accept concepts that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality." Taiho smiled. That's one thing our species have in common, at least. Change is hard for humans too. As they walked together toward the lab to continue their work, Juri felt something she couldn't name. A new sensation, watching Taeho as he talked passionately about their research. The Aetheri didn't have strong emotions, but for the first time, she wondered what it would be like to experience the world as humans did, with their souls fully engaged. And for the first time, she wondered if perhaps humans had evolved something truly special, something almost divine in its complexity and potential, something the Aetheri might learn from, rather than dismiss as primitive. Something worth understanding completely. "What is this?" Juri asked, looking at the small object Taeho had placed in her four-fingered hand. "A peach," Taeho said. "A fruit from Earth. Try it." 2 months had passed since they began their research. The Aetheri Science Council had reluctantly allowed Juri to continue her studies, though they warned her not to make excessive claims about human consciousness. Juri bit into the peach. Sweetness flooded her mouth. The Aetheri ate for nutrition, not pleasure. Their food was bland but efficient. This was different. "Good?" Taeho asked, watching her reaction. "Interesting," she replied, which made him laugh. She had noticed that Taeho found her literal responses amusing. "Why do humans grow food that tastes like this? It seems inefficient." "Because it brings joy," Taeho explained. "Not everything is about efficiency." Joy. Another concept the Aetheri struggled to understand. Their evolution had favored logic over emotion, precision over pleasure. But Juri was beginning to wonder if this had been a loss rather than an advantage. The cultural exchange section of the station had become busier as more humans and Aetheri arrived. Humans taught art classes, cooking demonstrations, and music sessions. The Aetheri offered classes in advanced mathematics, efficient resource management, and technological design. Juri observed a human teaching a group of curious Aetheri how to paint. The Aetheri could copy images with perfect accuracy, but struggled with the concept of artistic interpretation. "Don't paint what you see," the human teacher said. "Paint what you feel when you see it." The Aetheri students blinked in confusion. Feel. When they saw a flower, they saw a biological structure with specific functions. What else was there to see? Later, Juri found Taeho in the station's small library, reading an actual paper book. "What are you reading?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Ancient human myths," he replied. "Stories about gods and heroes." "Gods." The translator struggled with the term again. "Beings with powers beyond human capability," Taeho explained. "Most human cultures believed in them at some point. Some still do." "Like superior aliens?" Juri asked, trying to understand. Taeho smiled. "Not exactly. Gods were thought to be creators, not just advanced beings. They shaped reality, controlled natural forces, and sometimes took human form to interact with mortals." Juri's eyes widened. "Your species believed these stories were true." "Many still do," Taeho said. "Faith is important to humans. It gives meaning to things science can't always explain." "What things?" Juri asked. Taeho looked thoughtful. "Why we exist. What happens after death. Why we feel love, hope, sorrow. The purpose of it all." Juri processed this. "The Aetheri never developed such beliefs. We accept that existence simply is. There is no why." "That's the biggest difference between our species, I think," Taeho said. "Humans need meaning. We search for it everywhere, even in the stars." The next day, they continued their research with a new experiment. They scanned human subjects while they performed tasks the Aetheri found difficult, creating art, composing music, and solving problems that required intuitive leaps rather than step-by-step logic. In each case, the quantum patterns of human consciousness showed activity that the Aetheri could not explain or replicate. "Look at this," Juri said, showing Taeho the scan of a human composer. When she creates music, these patterns emerge that seem to connect to emotional centers, memory, and something else we can't identify. Maybe that's the creative spark, Taeho suggested. The thing that lets humans make something truly new rather than just combining existing ideas. Ju-rai ran her fingers over the display. How do you explain this ability? Why did humans evolve this way when the Aetheri did not? Taeho shrugged. Different evolutionary paths, different selective pressures, or maybe, he paused, smiling at what he was about to say, maybe the gods blessed humans with creative spirits. Juri didn't dismiss the idea as quickly as she once would have. After all, there was something in human consciousness that science, even Aetheri science, couldn't fully explain. That night, Juri couldn't sleep. She accessed the station's database and began reading human mythology. Tales of gods who created humans in their image. Stories of divine beings who granted fire, knowledge, or life to mortals. Myths of gods who took human form and had children with mortals, creating heroes with both divine and human qualities. The stories fascinated her. They were illogical, often contradictory, and yet there was something compelling about them. They spoke to questions the Aetheri had never even thought to ask. When morning came, she found Taeho in the cafeteria. "I've been reading about human gods," she said without greeting, "and demigods, children of gods and mortals." Taeho looked surprised. A bit of a jump from quantum consciousness research, isn't it? Is it? Juri asked. We've discovered that human consciousness operates in ways that defy our understanding of physics. Your quantum patterns show connections that shouldn't be possible according to known science. What if early humans sensed this difference? What if they interpreted these abilities as divine? Taeho considered this. So you're saying humans invented gods to explain their own consciousness? That's not a new theory. Many human anthropologists suggest the same. I'm suggesting, Juri said carefully, that there might be something to these myths. Not literal gods, but a recognition of something special in human consciousness. Something beyond normal evolution. Are you calling humans divine? Taeho asked, looking uncomfortable. I'm saying there's something in human consciousness that the Aetheri lack, Juri replied. Something that might benefit both our species if we understood it better. Later that week, Ju-rai received a message from the Aetheri Science Council. Her latest report had troubled them. They ordered her to focus solely on measurable phenomena and avoid philosophical speculation about human consciousness. They're scared, Taeho said when she showed him the message. Your findings challenge their worldview. The Aetheri value knowledge, Juri protested. Everyone values knowledge that confirms what they already believe, Taeho replied. It's much harder to accept ideas that force you to rethink everything. That evening, they tried a new experiment. Taeho suggested testing whether human consciousness could affect physical reality through intention alone, what humans might once have called prayer or magic. The results were small but measurable. Human subjects focusing their thoughts could create tiny statistical anomalies in quantum random number generators. Nothing dramatic, just slight patterns where there should be pure randomness. It's minimal, Juri said, looking at the data. But it exists, Taeho replied. And it shouldn't, according to physics. Somehow, human consciousness can influence physical reality in ways we don't understand. Juri felt a strange sensation as she looked at Taeho, who was excitedly examining the results. The Aetheri didn't have strong emotions, but she was developing something like them the more time she spent with humans. Especially this human. If humans can affect reality with their thoughts, she said slowly, even in these tiny ways, wouldn't combining Aetheri precision with human quantum abilities create something more powerful? Theoretically, maybe, Taeho said, not looking up from the data. But how would you do that? Juri didn't answer, but the idea had taken root. In the human myths she had read, gods and mortals had children who inherited qualities from both parents. demigods with the best of both worlds. As the research continued, Juri and Taeho grew closer. He taught her about human customs, foods, art, and emotions. She showed him etheri technology, philosophy, and social structures. They worked together each day, their different perspectives complementing each other. After a particularly successful experiment, they celebrated in the station's observation lounge, watching Earth rotate below them. "Do you miss your home?" Juri asked. "Sometimes," Taeho admitted. "Earth has beauty that can't be found anywhere else. Mountains, oceans, forests. But I'm where I need to be right now. This research is important." "Why is it important to you?" Juri asked. Taeho was quiet for a moment. "Because understanding consciousness might be the most important question humans have ever asked. Are we just complex machines? Or is there something more to us? Something special?" "I believe there is," Juri said firmly. "The data suggests it." Taeho smiled at her. "You know, for a species that supposedly lacks emotion, you've become quite passionate about this research." "Perhaps humans are influencing me," she replied. "Perhaps I'm developing my own small version of a soul." The joke surprised Taeho, who laughed loudly. Juri found she enjoyed making him laugh. It created a warm feeling she couldn't name but wanted to experience again. As the stars shone around them, Juri looked at this human who had changed how she saw the universe. If humans truly had something divine within them, this soul that defied scientific explanation, then perhaps the old myths weren't entirely wrong. Perhaps humans were, in their way, like the gods of their ancient stories. And for the first time, Juri wondered what a child of two worlds might be like. One with etheri logic and human soul. A being that could bridge the gap between their species and perhaps elevate both. Juri stood before the holographic display of the Etheri Science Council. Their faces showed no emotion. Etheri never did. But their words were sharp. "Your research has become problematic," said Elder Maxu, the head of the council. "You claim human consciousness has properties that defy known physics. This cannot be correct." "The data supports my findings," Juri replied, keeping her voice steady. 3 months of working with humans had taught her to control the new emotions she was developing. Humans possess quantum consciousness patterns that the Etheri do not. "You are being influenced by human irrationality," said another council member. "This talk of souls and special abilities is not scientific." "I have measurements," Juri insisted. "Scan data, repeatable experiments." "Your research is to be restricted," Elder Maxu declared. "No more experiments on human consciousness affecting physical reality. Return to basic comparative biology. That is all." The transmission ended. Juri stared at the empty space where the council had been. For the first time in her life, she felt something the humans called anger. The council was afraid of what her research might reveal, that the Etheri understanding of consciousness was incomplete. "They've restricted your research?" Taeho asked when she told him. They sat in his quarters, which were filled with books, plants from Earth, and small art pieces, all things no Etheri would have. "They don't want to accept that human consciousness might have properties ours doesn't," Juri said. Taeho nodded. "Humans have done the same throughout history. When new ideas threaten old beliefs, people resist." Juri looked at him. "I don't want to stop our work." "Neither do I," Taeho said, looking thoughtful. "The station director is human. He might allow us to continue unofficially if we're careful." "You would help me disobey the council?" Juri asked. Taeho smiled. "For science? Absolutely. Humans have a long history of breaking rules to discover truth." They set up their own small lab in an unused storage area. The station director, Dr. Han, agreed to look the other way as long as their official work continued. At night, they conducted their real experiments. Their findings became more interesting. When in states of deep emotion, human consciousness could affect quantum measurements in ways that defied probability. Nothing dramatic, No moving objects with minds or bending spoons, but small, measurable effects that shouldn't be possible. What if we could combine ethery precision with human quantum abilities? Juri asked one night as they analyzed data. Your species has something mine doesn't. This connection to quantum reality that goes beyond physical brain function. How would we do that? Taiho asked, not looking up from his screen. Juri took a deep breath. In human mythology, gods sometimes had children with mortals. The children inherited qualities from both parents. Now Taiho looked up, his eyes wide. Juri, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? A hybrid child, she said directly, in the ethery way. One with ethery logical abilities and human quantum consciousness properties. Taiho stood up. That's not possible. Our species are completely different biologically. Not with genetic engineering, Juri said. The ethery have advanced techniques. It would be challenging, but not impossible. Taiho paced the small lab. Even if it were possible physically, there are huge ethical questions, creating a new type of being just for research. Not just for research, Juri said quietly. For understanding. For bringing our species closer together. Taiho looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Why are you really suggesting this, Juri? The truth was complicated. The scientist in her wanted to explore the possibilities of combining ethery and human traits. But something else had grown in her during these months with Taiho, something the ethery weren't supposed to feel. Attachment, admiration, perhaps even what humans called love. I believe it would benefit both our species, she said finally. And, she hesitated, unused to expressing feelings. I have come to respect you greatly, Taiho. If I were to attempt this, I would want no other human partner. Taiho's face flushed red, a human reaction Juri now recognized as embarrassment or strong emotion. This is a lot to process, he said. I need time to think. Word of their secret research began to spread. Not the details, but rumors that Juri believed humans had special abilities the ethery lacked. Some humans on the station joked about being superior. Some ethery became concerned about human influence. One morning, Juri found a message painted on her door. Species traitor. That same day, Taiho was confronted by a group of human religious conservatives who had heard rumors that he was comparing humans to gods. They called his research blasphemy. People are afraid, Dr. Han warned them when they reported these incidents. When you challenge fundamental beliefs, whether ethery materialism or human religious views, people react strongly. We're just following the evidence, Taiho insisted. Evidence can be threatening, Dr. Han replied. Be careful. Despite the growing tension, Juri and Taiho continued their work. They discovered that when humans were in certain mental states, deep meditation, intense concentration, or strong emotional conditions, their quantum consciousness patterns showed remarkable coherence. It's as if the consciousness becomes more organized, Juri explained, showing Taiho the scan of a human meditation expert, almost like the ethery pattern, but with connections our species doesn't have. So humans can have both, the logical structure and the quantum connections, Taiho asked. In rare moments, Juri confirmed. Imagine a being that maintained both states naturally. Taiho was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about your proposal, he said finally, about a hybrid child. Juri felt a strange fluttering sensation inside her. Anticipation, a human might call it. I'm still not comfortable with the idea of creating a child just for scientific purposes, he continued. But I've realized something else is happening between us, isn't it? Juri nodded slowly. I have developed feelings that the ethery are not supposed to have. Working with you has changed me. You've changed me too, Taiho admitted. The way I think about consciousness, about what makes us who we are. He took her 4-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. The gesture was intimate by both human and ethery standards. If we ever considered having a child together, he said carefully, it would need to be for the right reasons, not just for science or to prove a theory. What are the right reasons? Juri asked. Love, Taiho said simply. Commitment, wanting to create a family. The word love made Juri feel warm in a way she couldn't explain. The Etheri had no word for this emotion, but she was beginning to understand it. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Dr. Han. The Etheri Council had learned of their continued research and was sending a ship to retrieve Juri and all her data. They can't force you to leave, Taiho said, looking worried. This station is under joint jurisdiction. They can revoke my scientific status, Juri explained. Without it, I have no right to be here. What about asylum? Humans have laws protecting scientific freedom. Juri considered this. The council would see that as betrayal of my entire species. Is your research worth that price? Taiho asked. Before she could answer, alarms sounded throughout the station. The emergency system announced, unknown vessel approaching. All personnel to secure positions. Dr. Han's voice came over their private channel. It's not the Etheri. It's a ship we can't identify. They're demanding access to your research data on human consciousness. I think someone has been watching you both. Taiho looked at Juri with alarm. Who would want our research badly enough to approach with an unauthorized ship? Anyone who believes humans have abilities that could be weaponized, Juri said grimly, or anyone who fears such abilities and wants to control them. They quickly gathered their most important data and headed for the secure section of the station. As they rushed through the corridors, Juri realized how far she had come from the logical, emotionless Etheri who had arrived months ago. She had discovered something profound in human consciousness, something her own people denied could exist. She had developed feelings for a being from another world. And now, they were both in danger because of what they had learned. As the station went into lockdown around them, Juri took Taiho's hand again. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. A union of logic and emotion, precision and creativity, Etheri and human. Perhaps that, more than any child they might create, was the true bridge between their species. The station shook as the unknown ship attempted to dock without authorization. Juri and Taiho ran through corridors filled with flashing red warning lights. This way, Dr. Han said, meeting them at a junction. We have a secure research pod in the lower section. They won't find you there. As they hurried, Dr. Han explained what little he knew. The ship is registered to a private organization, Unity of Sentient Evolution. They claim to be a scientific group, but intelligence reports suggest they're extremists who believe in forced evolution of all species. They want our research on human consciousness, Taiho realized. If human quantum abilities can influence reality, they could try to enhance those abilities. Juri finished his thought. Weaponize them. They'd reached the secure pod, a small, self-contained lab built for hazardous research. Dr. Han sealed them inside. I sent messages to both Earth Defense and the Etheri High Command. He told them through the communication system. Help should arrive in 8 hours. Stay here until then. After Dr. Han left, Juri began organizing their research data. We should prepare for the worst. If these extremists get our data, they could misuse it terribly. Taiho watched her work. You've changed so much since you first arrived, he observed. You're worried, planning ahead, showing concern for consequences. Very human reactions. Juri paused. Is that bad? No, he smiled. It's beautiful. You've grown beyond your programming while keeping your Etheri precision. You're living proof that our species can learn from each other. His words made her feel warm inside. Another human emotion she had adopted. And you have become more logical, more measured in your responses. You've adopted some Etheri traits as well. Taiho laughed. Maybe we're already creating a hybrid consciousness between us without needing a child. The word child hung in the air between them. Their earlier conversation had been interrupted by the crisis, but the question remained. About what I proposed. Juri said carefully. I've been thinking about your response. That we would need the right reasons. Tahoe asked. Yes. You said love would be the right reason. Juri's four-fingered hands fidgeted slightly, a human gesture she had unconsciously adopted. I've been studying this concept of love. The Aetherid don't have it, exactly. We have pair bonds based on compatibility and genetic diversity. And, Tahoe prompted when she paused. I think I understand love now, she said. It's wanting another's happiness. It's feeling complete in their presence. It's being willing to take risks for them. Tahoe stepped closer to her. That's a good definition. By that definition, Juri continued, looking directly at him with her large eyes, I believe I love you, Tahoe. Not just as a research subject or colleague. As whatever humans call a deeply important person in their life. Partner, Tahoe suggested gently, or beloved. He took her hands in his. I love you too, Juri. I didn't expect it. Didn't think it was possible between such different beings. But here we are. The moment was interrupted by a loud bang against the pod door. Someone was trying to break in. For the next hour, they worked quickly, backing up their research while deleting the originals. Outside, they could hear voices and the sounds of tools against the door. There's something I haven't told you, Juri said as they worked. Something I discovered in my private research. Tahoe looked up. What is it? I believe the Aethery once had the same quantum consciousness properties the humans have, she explained. I found traces in our oldest genetic records. But we evolved away from it, favoring pure logic instead. You lost your souls, Tahoe said softly. In a manner of speaking, yes, but the potential is still there, dormant. Juri uploaded the last data packet to a secure location. That's why I was so interested in a hybrid child. Not to create something new, but to reawaken something lost. The pounding at the door grew louder. It wouldn't hold much longer. If we don't survive this, Tahoe said, I want you to know that working with you has been the most important experience of my life. Same, Juri said, using the human shorthand she had learned. The door began to buckle inward. Just as the door was about to give way, alarms sounded again. The station's AI announced. Attention. Aethery diplomatic vessel detected. Unknown ship attempting emergency departure. The pounding stopped. Through the pod's small window, they saw security personnel rushing past. We're saved, Tahoe asked, looking confused. The Aethery arrived early, Juri said. The extremists are running away. An hour later, the door opened. Dr. Hand stood there with an Aethery official Juri recognized. Takri, her old mentor from the Science Academy. You are both safe, Takri stated in the flat Aethery manner. That is, good. Coming from an Aethery, even this small expression of concern was unusual. Juri noticed something else odd. Takri had come personally rather than sending security officers. The council sent you? She asked. No, Takri replied. I came without their knowledge when I learned of their plans to terminate your research. I have been curious about your findings. This was surprising. Takri had always been the most traditional of teachers. Why? Juri asked. Takri's expression remained neutral, but her voice softened slightly. Because long ago, I too noticed anomalies in human brain patterns, but I suppressed my findings, fearing the rejection of the council. You were braver than I was. In the following days, an unexpected alliance formed. Takri, respected within the Aethery scientific community, declared her support for Juri's research. Dr. Hand provided official human backing. With protectors from both species, Juri and Tahoe were allowed to continue their work officially. The extremists who had tried to steal their research were captured when their ship was intercepted by an Earth defense cruiser. Their organization was revealed to be small but dangerous, willing to use any means to advance their vision of controlled evolution. 1 week after the attack, Juri and Tahoe stood in the observation lounge, watching Earth below. Their hands were intertwined, a public statement of their relationship that turned heads among both humans and Etheri. "I have something to show you," Jewry said. She activated a holographic display from her personal device. It showed 2 brain scans side by side. "This is my brain from when I first arrived at the station," she explained, pointing to the left image. "And this is my brain now." Taiho's eyes widened. "The patterns, they're different. Your quantum signature is more like a human's now." "Yes," Jewry confirmed. "Working with you, developing emotions, learning to think intuitively. It's changing my physical brain structure. The potential was always there, just dormant. So the Etheri can develop these abilities naturally?" Taiho asked. "Through interaction with humans." "It seems so," Jewry said, "which means we don't need to create a hybrid child to bridge our species. We can change ourselves through connection and understanding." Taiho smiled. "So no more talk of bearing the child of a god." Jewry's skin flushed a deeper blue, her species' version of a blush. "That was perhaps dramatic thinking on my part. I mistook the wonder of human consciousness for something divine. And now I understand better," she said. "What humans have isn't godlike power. It's simply a different way of connecting to reality. And what the Etheri have isn't cold logic devoid of feeling. It's precision and clarity that humans sometimes lack." Taiho nodded. "Neither superior, just different. With things to teach each other." "Exactly," Jewry agreed. "Though, I haven't completely abandoned the idea of a child someday. Just for better reasons now." Taiho's hand tightened around hers. "Love being the main one." "Yes," she said, "love being the main one." 6 months later, a small group gathered in the station's garden section, a blend of earth plants and Etheri crystal formations. Jewry and Taiho stood before them, dressed in garments that combined styles from both worlds. "We gather to witness the union of 2 beings from different worlds," Dr. Han announced, serving as the ceremony leader. "A union that represents hope for greater understanding between all sentient species." Takre stepped forward, representing the growing faction of Etheri who supported closer relations with humans. "Logic suggests that diversity strengthens all," she stated in the traditional Etheri manner, but with a warmth that would have been impossible months earlier. Jewry looked at Taiho, her once flat eyes now expressive with emotion. "I came seeking knowledge about human consciousness. I found something more valuable. Connection, understanding, love." Taiho smiled back at her. "And I learned that what makes us human isn't just our quantum souls, but our capacity to recognize the soul in others, even when they come from the stars and have blue skin and 4 fingers." As they completed their vows, Jewry thought about how far she had come. She no longer sought to bear the child of a god. She had discovered something more profound. That divinity wasn't found in special powers or alien abilities, but in the connection between conscious beings who chose to understand each other. That was the true miracle. That was worth crossing the stars to find.